After coming back from a 3-year business trip abroad, my fiancée welcomed me home warmly and invited me to join her company. I thought it was a sign of trust, maybe even love. But just a few days after I started working there, something strange happened. Her male assistant came over and handed me a document. "Sign this compensation agreement," he said bluntly. I frowned, puzzled. "What's the meaning of this?" He gave me a dismissive look, his tone dripping with arrogance. "Shouldn't you take responsibility for the mess you made?" I thought he must have confused me with someone else. Patiently, I explained, "I just got here. I haven't even been assigned to a project. How could I have possibly made a mess?" But when I refused to sign, his expression darkened. He slammed the agreement down on the table, crossed his arms, and looked down at me with disdain. "Just sign it. Where's all this nonsense coming from?" I couldn't be bothered arguing with him anymore, so I picked up my phone and called my fiancée. To my surprise, Victoria's voice on the other end wasn't gentle. It was impatient. "Ethan got into a bit of trouble a couple of days ago. Just take the fall for him. I'm warning you, don't throw a tantrum. He's the son of our corporation's chairman. If we don't keep him happy, we'll both be fired." Her words stunned me. Slowly, I lifted my eyes toward the arrogant man standing in front of me. Since when did my mother have a son like this? I glanced back down at the compensation agreement. It accused me of leaking core project data, claiming I was responsible for massive company losses. A heavy, fabricated accusation. When I first returned from abroad, Victoria Jones had been enthusiastic, even insistent, about me joining her company. With our wedding day approaching, I wanted to test her character one last time, so I agreed. I never imagined she was setting me up as Ethan Johnson's scapegoat. On the phone, Victoria must have realized her tone had been harsh because she softened her voice and tried to sound sincere. "I'm just thinking about our future. Ethan is the chairman's son. His record can't have any blemishes. You're different. You're a newcomer, so it's normal for you to take a little heat." I cut her off coldly. "Victoria, I suggest you think this through carefully before you make a decision." Then I hung up. The next moment, Ethan Johnson suddenly poured a glass of ice water over my head. The shock of it made me shiver as the cold ran down my hair and soaked my shirt. He looked at me with utter contempt. "You're just a diploma mill graduate," he sneered. "If it weren't for Victoria, you'd probably still be picking trash off the streets. Now, you're being asked to make a small contribution to the company, and you're dragging your feet? Let me tell you, if you don't sign this today, and our partners come after us, and my mom finds out, no one will be able to protect you. All my life, no one had ever dared humiliate me like this." And to top it off, my Stanford MBA was being ridiculed as if it came from a diploma mill. Rage surged through me. Without thinking twice, I grabbed the still steaming cup of coffee on the desk and splashed it directly in his face. "Ah!" Ethan screamed, clutching his scalded skin. The office erupted instantly. Gasps, whispers, the sound of chairs scraping back. "Isn't that Director Jones's fiancé? The one who just came back from abroad?" Someone whispered. "He's got some nerve. Making an enemy of little Lord Lynn on his first day. He's finished. It's over for him now." The scene was so dramatic that, if I didn't know my parents had been inseparable for decades, I might have suspected Ethan was my mother's illegitimate son. I hadn't looked at him closely before, but now, as he wiped his face with a tissue, trembling with rage, I noticed he did look oddly familiar. "Sincere Smith, are you insane? Do you even know what you're doing?" he shouted. I met his gaze coldly. "Of course I know. I'm teaching a lesson to someone who made a mistake and tried to shift the blame. Do you know who I am?" he shrieked. I sneered. "I don't care who you are. In my presence, you're nothing." Just then, Victoria walked in. The moment she saw Ethan's burned face, her expression changed drastically. She rushed straight to his side, not even glancing at me. Gently, tenderly, she cupped his face in her hands. "Ethan, how are you? Are you okay?" she asked in a soft voice I had never heard her use with me, even when I'd been sick with a fever. All she ever said was, "Drink more water," but for him her tone was delicate, caring. Ethan's eyes grew watery as he whimpered, "Victoria, my face hurts so much. Is Sincere trying to disfigure me?" Then he buried his head in her shoulder. Victoria froze for a second. Then a flicker of joy crossed her face as she hugged him back tightly. In that moment, they looked more like a couple than we ever had. Her eyes shot toward me, burning with fury. "Sincere, are you crazy? Apologize to Ethan right now." I didn't move. I only stared at her, my voice cold. Victoria, he threw water on me first. Why should I apologize? Her face twisted with rage. She jabbed a finger at me. You hurt Ethan, and you still dare to argue? I must have been blind to ever fall for a vicious man like you. Vicious. That was what she called me now. It was clear our relationship had long since turned into an inconvenience for her. Strangely, I felt both regret and relief. Regret that before I went abroad, I had recommended her to my mother for the branch manager position, confidently assuring her that Victoria was talented and trustworthy. Relief that I had never revealed my true identity. She still thought I was just some ordinary rich kid with a little money. At least this way, I had seen her true colors. In that case, Victoria, I said quietly, we're through. I stood up to leave. But she grabbed my arm, snatched the compensation agreement off the table, and shouted furiously, Sincere, you think you can play games with me? You think I'll be scared? Let me tell you, this isn't over. You splashed Ethan, and as for this agreement, if you don't sign it, you're not leaving here today. My head throbbed from the ice water, exhaustion creeping over me. I didn't want to argue anymore. I reached out, took the agreement, and signed a name at the bottom. Then I tossed it back at her. She clearly hadn't expected me to give in so easily. She froze for several seconds, staring in disbelief, before bending down to pick up the document. Just as I stepped into the elevator, her furious roar echoed behind me. Sincere, how dare you sign Ethan's name? Get back here. The elevator doors slid shut, cutting her off. Downstairs, the family car was already waiting. I climbed in and leaned back against the seat, exhausted. Home, I murmured. The driver, Lincoln Johnson, nodded silently and pulled away. I closed my eyes, my head still aching, and drifted into sleep. When I woke, the car wasn't in front of my house. It was parked outside a 5-star hotel. Lincoln Johnson had been with my family for over 30 years. To me, he was practically family himself. That was why I trusted him enough to sleep soundly in the car. But now, unease prickled through me. Uncle Lincoln, I asked sharply, didn't I tell you to drive home? Why are we here? He turned to face me. The respectful expression I had known all my life was gone, replaced with something chilling, something malicious. I'm sorry, young master, he said coldly. But as a family elder, I feel it's my duty to teach you how to take responsibility for your mistakes. In that moment, I suddenly understood why Ethan's face had looked so familiar. He was Lincoln's son. I reached for my phone, desperate to call the police. But Lincoln was faster. He snatched it from my hand. Young master, don't waste your energy, he said flatly. I glared at him. Lincoln Johnson, aren't you afraid my mother will find out about this? He gave a derisive snort. The chairman has been busy with overseas expansion these past few years. She's barely even in the country. She doesn't care about this branch's trivial matters. But you dared to hurt my son. Now, you'll pay the price. With that, he yanked the car door open, grabbed my arm, and dragged me out with surprising strength. I struggled to break free, but his grip was like iron. Fortunately, in the chaos, I found a chance to press the emergency alert button on my watch without anyone noticing. What are you trying to do? Who are you? I asked, trying to buy myself some time and understand my situation, hoping to find a way to handle it, but Lincoln wasn't falling for it. Without saying a word, he dragged me through the hallway, pushed open a door, and shoved me inside a private room. The room was thick with smoke, the air heavy with the stench of cigars and alcohol. At the head of the table sat a fat, greasy man. Victoria was beside him, fawning and smiling as she lifted a glass and a flattering toast. Lincoln bowed deeply, obsequious as ever. Mr. Wagner, I brought the person for you. Ethan shot up from his seat, his expression triumphant as he pointed at me. Mr. Wagner, he's the one who leaked the project data. I brought him here especially to apologize to you. The man at the head of the table, I remembered him now. Charles Wagner, the boss of our company's biggest competitor. In his 50s, infamous for his perversions and his vile reputation. Aha! Young Master Johnson, you're too kind. Charles chuckled, setting his glass down and looking me over. His eyes glinted in a way that made my skin crawl. So this is the one who leaked the data? Not bad looking at all. He stood up and swaggered toward me, his belly shaking with each step. Hey, handsome, do you know how much money our company lost because of your little stunt? I sneered. When did I ever leak any data? Ethan immediately pulled out the compensation agreement. Still pretending? Don't forget you already signed this. I glanced at the paper. It was indeed the one I had signed earlier. But where I had clearly written Ethan Johnson's name, it now read, Sincere Smith, you forged the agreement, I said coldly. Victoria sneered, her lips curling. Sincere, don't make baseless accusations. You signed this with your own hand. We have security footage to prove it. I clenched my fists. She was right, there had been cameras in the office. They could record me signing, but not the specific words I wrote, Mr. Wagner, you see? Ethan said smugly, fanning the flames. He's completely unrepentant. He even splashed a full cup of coffee on me in the office just now. He's unbelievably arrogant. Charles Wagner's lips twisted into a meaningful smile. His eyes lingered on me in a way that made bile rise in my throat. Well, handsome, since you made a mistake, you'll have to face the consequences. His gaze swept shamelessly over my body. Mr. Smith is quite the looker. Even more handsome than in the photos Director Jones showed me. He licked his lips. Victoria immediately bowed and flattered, her voice dripping with false humility. Mr. Wagner, Sincere is young and foolish. He made a mistake this time. You're a magnanimous man, please don't hold it against him. Why don't we have him join you for a few drinks tonight to properly apologize? That beast, Victoria. Not only was she pushing me to take the fall, she was now offering me up to this disgusting old man. Charles Wagner picked up his glass of wine and approached me. Handsome, he murmured. A wise man submits to circumstances. As long as you keep me happy tonight, we can renegotiate the compensation. In your dreams, I shoved him away and bolted toward the door, but two hulking bodyguards immediately stepped in, blocking my escape. I spun around, my fury boiling over. Victoria, are you even human? After 3 years together, this is how you treat me? She sneered, her eyes cold. Feelings? Compared to my future, what are feelings? Besides, you're the one who leaked business secrets. Are you trying to shirk responsibility now? I didn't. I shouted. She folded her arms. The evidence is conclusive, and you still want to argue? With a wave of her hand, she gestured to the bodyguards. Bring him over. I fought desperately, but the bodyguards pinned me down in a chair. Victoria, you've been fooled by Ethan. I shouted hoarsely. I'm Susan Smith's biological son. If you hurt me, my mother will never forgive you. The room froze for a heartbeat. Then, suddenly, laughter erupted, loud and derisive. Victoria bent down, patted my cheek mockingly, and looked at me like I was a clown. You? Saying the chairman is your mother. Don't be ridiculous. I see Ethan getting in and out of Chairman Smith's car every day. Who else but her son would get that kind of treatment? Her expression turned sharp. Since you've chosen the hard way, don't blame us for being rough. She pinched my chin, grabbed a glass of wine, and started forcing it into my mouth. The cold liquor flooded down, choking me. I shook my head desperately, spilling it over my chin and soaking my clothes. But she was relentless. Glass after glass poured down my throat. My stomach burned, my head swam, my consciousness began to blur. Enough! I roared, summoning all my strength to shove her away. Victoria's eyes flashed with malice. She seized the entire bottle, forced my mouth open, and poured it in. Not drinking? Then we'll pour it down your throat. The liquor burned like fire, scorching my insides. My vision blurred, the world spinning around me. My limbs grew heavy, unresponsive. Charles Wagner's eyes gleamed with excitement as he watched. Excellent, excellent. This is much more entertaining. Seeing that I could no longer resist, Victoria pulled a key card from her pocket and handed it to Wagner. Mr. Wagner, room 128. I prepared it specially for you. Ha! Little Victoria, you're very thoughtful. Charles laughed, patting her shoulder. You have a bright future ahead of you. I felt rough hands grabbing my arms, dragging me toward the door. I wanted to scream, to fight, but the alcohol had stolen my strength. Despair crushed me like a tidal wave. Then bang! The door to the private room burst open, kicked clean off its hinges. A familiar voice thundered, "Bastards! You dare touch my son? You're looking for death!" My mother stood at the doorway, her presence radiating power. At her side was Uncle Walter, the company's vice president, followed by a dozen black-suited bodyguards. Her eyes, colder than I had ever seen them, the blood drained from every face in the room. Through my haze, I turned my head. My vision was blurry, but I knew it was her. The one person I had always relied on. "Mom," I managed to whisper before my strength gave out and I collapsed into her arms. Her grip tightened around me. Seeing me soaked in liquor and barely conscious, the killing intent in her eyes became almost tangible. "Uncle Walter," she snapped. He lifted his hand, and our bodyguard swarmed the room, pinning everyone to the ground. Victoria's eyes widened. In horror, she looked at my mother, then at me, her voice shaking as she muttered, How can this be? Chairman Smith, your husband's surname is Johnson. How could Sincere be your son?" My mother sneered. "What? My son isn't allowed to take my surname?" Victoria went pale. Finally realizing the truth, she collapsed to her knees with a dull thud. "Chairman Smith, I didn't know. I really didn't know he was your son," she wailed. Ethan and his father crumpled too, their faces etched with despair. Lincoln Johnson's voice trembled as he tried to stammer out an excuse. "Chairman, I didn't know." "You didn't know?" My mother's voice cracked like a whip. "You've worked by my side for 30 years, and you dare say you didn't know what my own son looks like?" Lincoln's face turned ashen. He could no longer utter a word. Charles Wagner's lips quivered, his lecherous gleam replaced with raw terror. His face was the color of ash. "Chairman Smith, this is all a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" My mother's expression was icy, her arms still wrapped around me. "You force-fed my son alcohol, and what you were about to do to him, that's a misunderstanding too." Victoria broke down completely. She slammed her forehead to the floor again and again, her voice hoarse. "Chairman Smith, it's all my fault. I was blinded by greed. Please forgive me this once." "Forgive you?" My mother's laugh was colder than ice. "You nearly got my son killed, and you still dare ask for forgiveness?" Ethan, finally realizing the gravity of the situation, shouted desperately, "Please, Mr. Smith and I are colleagues. Please spare me." Uncle Walter leaned in close to my mother. "Chairman, should we send the young master to the hospital first?" She gave a sharp nod. "Yes. Lock down the hotel. Call the police. Not a single person involved tonight is leaving." The ambulance arrived quickly. I was lifted onto a stretcher, my consciousness flickering in and out as the alcohol overwhelmed me. Through the haze, I noticed something. My mother wasn't coming with me. She was staying behind, her face a mask of fury, to personally deal with those who had dared to harm me. In the private room, Victoria was on her knees, completely broken. She knelt on the floor, her forehead bloody and raw from kowtowing, her voice rasping as she begged, "Chairman Smith, I was wrong. It was Lincoln Johnson and his son who tricked me. I swear I didn't know Sincere was your son. Please." Victoria's voice cracked as she tried to explain herself. "We were together for 3 years. My feelings for him were real. I was just deceived. I thought he had really betrayed the company." Her pleas grew more desperate as she crawled toward my mom, but my mom kicked her away with full force. Victoria crashed into the wall and coughed up blood. "So, if you didn't know he was my son, it would be okay to harm him?" My mom's voice was ice cold. Victoria's eyes widened in despair as she shook her head frantically. "No, Chairman Smith, I didn't want to harm him. I just wanted him to apologize. I never meant to. You never meant to." My mom's eyes narrowed. She turned toward Charles Wagner. "Then what was this old Leck doing here?" "Charles." Wagner was trembling so hard that his pants were soaked. "Chairman Smith, I was just here to discuss a partnership. I didn't do anything." But my mom's gaze landed on the key card sitting on the table. The killing intent in her eyes overflowed. "Room 128. You were all very well prepared." Victoria's face went completely pale. Hopelessness filled her eyes. She knew nothing she said could save her. Then my mom's gaze shifted to Lincoln Johnson. The man who had been her subordinate for 30 years was now shaking like a leaf. "Lincoln." My mom's voice carried both pain and disappointment. "You saved my life once, and since then, I've treated you like family. I gave your son a chance. Let him join the company. And this is how you repay me. This is how you treat my son?" Lincoln's voice trembled, his face ashen. "Chairman, He couldn't speak. He knew it was over. Finally, her eyes fell on Ethan Johnson, the man who had dared impersonate her son. He was collapsed on the floor, his face filled with despair. "Impersonating my son. Harming my son. Very good." Ethan suddenly crawled over and clutched at her leg. "Chairman Smith, I was wrong. I truly know I was wrong. It was my dad who forced me. He said if I could get close to Victoria, our family would be set for life. I'm a victim too." My mom kicked him away. "A victim?" Her voice was terrifyingly cold. When you watched my son being forced to drink, did you think of him as a victim too? Ethan broke down in despair, his makeup ruined from tears and sweat. A bodyguard approached my mom and spoke softly. "Chairman, the police are almost here." She nodded and glanced around at the group. "Every single person involved tonight will be held accountable." Hearing that, Victoria knew it was over. With the Smith family's power, her life was utterly ruined. In the hospital room, the smell of antiseptic filled the air. I leaned against the bed, holding Uncle Walter's phone. On the screen was a live feed from the hotel's security camera. They were all still kneeling on the floor. Victoria's forehead was cracked and bloody. Lincoln Johnson sat slumped in a corner, completely defeated. Ethan lay on the floor, crying uncontrollably. Watching them, a sense of satisfaction washed over me. "Mom, give the phone to Ethan." My mom walked over and handed it to him. Ethan held the phone with trembling hands, his voice choked with sobs. "Mr. Smith," I spoke slowly, my voice calm. "Ethan, after I realized you were Lincoln's son, I suddenly remembered something. Do you remember? Over a decade ago, when you lived in the backyard of our house, you used to steal my model kits and video games." On the other end, Ethan let out a terrified sob. His pupils shrank. He remembered the past he had tried so hard to bury. When you were caught, you would cry and say, "I had given them to you." My mom felt sorry for you, so she never pursued it. Ethan's cries grew louder. He shook his head frantically, as if denying reality. I continued, my voice colder now. "I never thought that after all these years, your habit of stealing would be exactly the same. Not only did you steal Project Data, you even tried to steal my life. You and your father are rotten to the core." That broke him completely. Ethan collapsed to the floor, wailing like a child. His cries were heart-wrenching. He remembered that envious boy he once was, the boy who could never have what others did. Lincoln's face grew even more ashen. Victoria's eyes widened in shock. For the first time, she saw Ethan clearly. This was who he had always been. She had been fooled completely and utterly. My mom took the phone back, her voice soft with concern. "Sincere, you should rest. I'll handle the rest." "No need, Mom." I leaned back against the pillow, my voice steady. "I want to watch them pay the price with my own eyes." In the private room, they all trembled at my words. Ethan crawled forward suddenly, crying into the phone. "Sincere, I was wrong. I really know I was wrong. Ever since we were kids, I was jealous of you. Jealous that you had such good parents, so many expensive toys. But I'm a victim too. My dad forced me. He said if I could get close to Victoria, our family could make it big." Listening to him, I felt nothing but disgust. Even now, he was still trying to push the blame onto others. Victoria finally processed everything. She turned on Ethan with fury. "So, you deliberately pretended to be the chairman's son just to get close to me? To ruin my relationship with Sincere?" Ethan shook his head desperately. "Victoria, no, my feelings for you are real." "Real?" She sneered. "Your entire identity is a lie. How can you talk about real feelings?" I watched them tear each other apart like dogs, a cold satisfaction rising in my chest. The police, alerted by my mom, arrived swiftly. Charles Wagner, Victoria Jones, Lincoln and Ethan Johnson, and all the bodyguards were arrested. I thought it was over, but 3 days later, Charles Wagner's Juan group launched an attack. A maliciously edited video went viral online. In the footage, I was shown drunk and disheveled, clinging to Charles Wagner in a way that looked suggestive. All the parts where I had been force-fed alcohol and resisted desperately were cut out. Juan Group's PR machine went into overdrive. Articles flooded the internet. Sincere Smith sells his body to steal trade secrets. Cries foul when it fails. Smith Corporation airs depraved private life exposed. Rich kid caught in honey trap scheme. Lying in my hospital bed. I scrolled through the comments, my fingers trembling. This man is disgusting, even if he looks decent. Sons of rich families are all the same. They'll do anything for money. Mr. Wagner is the real victim here. Each comment was a knife in my chest. I remembered the humiliation of that night. Remembered Charles Wagner's filthy hands on me. My stomach churned. The Smith Corporation's stock price plummeted. Phone lines were jammed. Reporters swarmed. Uncle Walter rushed in. "Chairman, the company's stock has already dropped 30. I looked at my mom, guilt flooding me. "Mom, I'm sorry." My voice choked. She came over and stroked my hair gently. "Sincere, this is not your fault. Charles Wagner is trying to short our stock by attacking you." Her eyes flashed with killing intent. "He thinks he can crush us this way." I suddenly sat up, a spark of determination igniting inside me. "Mom, it's our turn to fight back." Her eyes widened, then softened with approval. "Sincere, what do you have in mind?" "A press conference." I wiped my tears away. "We'll reveal the whole truth." The next day, Smith Corporation held a press conference. The room was packed with reporters, cameras flashing endlessly. I sat at the main table, facing dozens of cameras, friends from the media. I began, my voice steady. "Today, I am here to clarify a few things." The big screen lit up. The first video began to play. Gasps filled the room. The footage rolled across the giant screen. "This," I said firmly, my voice echoing through the press hall, "is the complete recording of Lincoln Johnson drugging me and dragging me to that hotel." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Immediately after, the second video began to play. It showed the private room in brutal detail, me being forced to drink glass after glass of alcohol, my resistance ignored, my body slumping. And then, crystal clear, Victoria handing over the key card. The room went silent. Reporters froze in their seats, stunned. "This," I continued, my throat tight but steady, "is the full record of what happened to me in that room. Please, see for yourselves, see who the real victim is." Then came the third video, the one that shattered everything. Chat logs between Ethan Johnson and Charles Wagner flashed on the screen, line by line. Each message detailed the sale of our company's core project data. Alongside the logs were the bank transactions, $1 million paid in full. The so-called elite of business, Charles Wagner, exposed for what he truly was. The hall erupted into chaos. Reporters shouted over one another, cameras clicked wildly, and phones flew into the air to record. "This is the biggest story of the year," someone cried, and just like that, the press conference went viral. Overnight, public opinion flipped completely. "Oh my God, Mr. Smith is the real victim. Charles Wagner is a monster, he's not even human. One group is disgusting. How could they frame a victim like that?" The tide had turned. Sue Corporation's stock soared back up, while one group's value plummeted. I sat in my office, watching their stock chart collapse on my computer screen. A cold smile crept onto my lips. "Mom," I whispered, "let's close the net." Over the next 3 days, Sue Corporation launched a ruthless, lightning-fast siege. Partners severed contracts with one group. Banks demanded their loans back. Suppliers cut off shipments without hesitation. The great Charles Wagner, the untouchable giant of the business world, could only watch helplessly as his empire disintegrated. By the third evening, one group officially declared bankruptcy. I was drinking tea when the news came. At first, the taste was bitter, but the aftertaste lingered. Sweet. The war Charles Wagner had started had ended with his total destruction. The courts moved quickly, backed by mountains of evidence. Charles Wagner, guilty of kidnapping, corporate espionage, defamation, and attempted rape. 20 years in prison. Lincoln Johnson, guilty of kidnapping. 10 years. Ethan Johnson, guilty of fraud, espionage, and defamation. 15 years plus repayment of every stolen dollar. Victoria Jones, guilty of gross negligence and accessory to a crime. 7 years. On sentencing day, I sat quietly in the gallery, listening to each name, each verdict. With every guilty charge, a weight lifted from my chest. Charles Wagner was the last. As they led him away, he turned back to look at me. Once, his eyes had leered at me with arrogance and lust. Now, they held only despair. Ethan Johnson wept uncontrollably. When Victoria's turn came, she glanced at me one last time. Her eyes brimmed with regret, her lips trembling as if she wanted to speak. But I had already turned away. When the storm finally settled, I stepped into my new role as general manager of the branch. My first act was simple. I gathered every employee for an all-hands meeting. Standing on the stage, I declared, "From this day forward, our company will value ability, not connections." My voice carried through the hall. Below me, the employees whispered, some excited, some uncertain. "If you have talent, you can rise," I said. "If you cut corners, there's the door." Applause broke out. Soft at first, then louder, until the room thundered with it. Months later, Victoria's parents came to see me. Her father fell to his knees the moment he saw me. "Sincere, I beg you, please forgive Victoria." I rushed to help him up. "Sir, please don't do this." Her mother stepped forward and handed me an envelope. "She wrote this herself," she said softly. "She knows she was wrong, truly wrong. I took the letter, my chest tightening. Once, I had dreamed of receiving a love letter from Victoria. But this was a confession. For the sake of the years you shared, her father pleaded. Please give her a chance. I shook my head slowly. Sir, some things, once broken, are gone for good. Later at home, I opened the letter. Victoria had written everything: how we met, how we fell in love. She reminded me of our first date, when I was so nervous I spilled my coffee. Of the movie we watched together, when tears streamed down my face. Of the night we argued and I ignored her, yet she still waited downstairs until morning. Every word dripped with sorrow. Sincere, I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but losing you was the greatest mistake of my life. If I could turn back time, I would never have let Ethan near me. I would never have hurt you. I'm willing to spend the rest of my life atoning for my sins, if only you'll give me another chance. Tears slid down my cheeks, not for Victoria, but for the version of myself who had once loved her so desperately. Without hesitation, I walked to the paper shredder. Slowly, I fed the letter inside. The blades whirred, and the white pages turned to nothing but strips. With that, the Sincere of the past was gone forever. That evening, I declined the driver's offer and walked home alone. The sun was setting, the streets bustling with cars and people. I passed a flower shop and stepped inside. Good evening, sir, the owner greeted. What flowers can I get you? Sunflowers, I said. She smiled. Sunflowers represent new beginnings and hope, I nodded, walking out with a golden bouquet in my hands. On the way, I bumped into an old colleague, Mr. Smith. Jang rushed over. You're our idol now. I chuckled. Don't say that. I only did what had to be done. You don't understand, he said breathlessly. Everyone's talking about your story. They're calling you a real-life hero. A hero? I shook my head. No, just an ordinary man who refused to be bullied. When I finally got home, I placed the sunflowers in a vase. Their golden petals glowed warmly, just like my mood. I realized I no longer had to prove anything to anyone. The moment I could quietly enjoy this peace, I knew my new life had already begun. My phone rang. It was my mother. Sincere, she said happily. The stock price went up again. No, I answered calmly. And also, she added, there are some nice young women who'd love to meet you. I laughed. Mom, I'm not thinking about dating right now. You're right, she said. Focus on your career first. Romance can wait. After we hung up, I stood at the window, gazing out at the city skyline. Lights twinkled everywhere, each one a family, a story, and mine was just beginning. The dust of yesterday could no longer stir any storms in my heart.